Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. The origin of spiders. Scientists recently discovered the preserved remains of an arachnid from 305 million years ago that they have said was almost a spider. Researchers say the mysterious arachnid could help shed light on the origin of everyone's favorite eight-legged creatures. But the ancient arachnid was a little different from spiders we know today. It could likely produce silk, but didn't have the spinnerets used by real spiders. That means that even though they could produce silk, they wouldn't have been able to spin it. The scientists behind the discovery named the creature Idmonarachne brassieri. It's a kind of missing link between the earliest spider relatives and the modern-day silk-weaving spiders. It's the closest thing related to a spider that's not factually a spider. The bizarre specimen was found in a fossil deposit in France, which was originally found over 40 years ago. It was sitting in a box for decades at the Museum of Natural History in Paris. But it was only recently that scientists took the fossilized remains out of the box and realized they were dealing with an arachnid that lived 80 million years before the first dinosaurs. However, it's not entirely understood what these ancient eight-legged creatures did with their silk, seeing as they couldn't spin webs. It's still a huge mystery that nobody's been able to solve. And now for number 9. But first, it's shout-out time! I want to give a huge thank you to Gottes Seigrach Godbout and Joel Calzado for watching and supporting this channel. We really appreciate your feedback. If this is your first time here, be sure to subscribe and join the family. Number 9. Mammoth bones. A farmer in Michigan named James Bristle was digging a trench with his neighbor when the pair came across an unprecedented discovery. James needed to install a drainage pipe in his wheat field on the outskirts of the small city of Chelsea. But as he was working, his backhoe struck something hard buried 8 feet beneath the ground. At first, James and his neighbor thought they simply hit a buried piece of wood, maybe an old fence post. But when they cleared away the muck and grime, they realized they were staring at solid bone. They found something neither of them had ever seen before. Buried underneath James's wheat field was the fully intact skull of a woolly mammoth, still connected to its massive tusks. Since he wasn't an archaeologist, James didn't know it was a mammoth right away. All he could be certain of was that he had a bone that belonged to an animal much larger than one he'd seen before. So, the farmer got in contact with the University of Michigan, conveniently located just 10 miles from his field. Daniel Fisher from the university's Museum of Paleontology arrived at the farm with 15 students to investigate. And with the help of some local excavators, they dug a giant pit. Soon enough, they'd retrieve the remains of the prehistoric mammoth. They then used zip lines and a backhoe to hoist the preposterously large skull out of the pit and subsequently place it on a flatbed truck. But amazingly, there was a lot more to find at the site than just the mammoth skull and tusks. The archaeologists kept digging and also found vertebrae, a pelvis, the animal's ribs, and its shoulder blades. The pit was then filled in so that James could continue farming. The mammoth turned out to be one of only 30 found in Michigan. This particular specimen was an adult male who likely lived 15,000 years ago and was in his late 40s when he passed away. It wasn't just any ordinary mammoth either, but a Jeffersonian mammoth. It was a hybrid of an ordinary woolly mammoth and a Columbian mammoth. What would you do if you found a prehistoric creature in your backyard? Let me know in the comments. Number 8. The venomous dinosaur. The Sinornithosaurus may have been one of the only dinosaurs with a venomous bite. In 2010, a group of scientists analyzed microscopic cell structures in the preserved remains of one of these ancient creatures, finding that they had feathers that varied in color across their bodies. Amazingly, they found that these dinosaurs were about as colorful as peacocks. Another team of scientists, led by expert Empu Gong, analyzed the preserved skull and found convincing features to suggest the Sinornithosaurus was the first venomous dinosaur to ever be identified. They came to this conclusion after noting the creature's unusually long teeth, which had grooves running down their exterior. This is a characteristic typically seen with venomous animals that need a distribution system for their venom. When this dinosaur chomped down on its prey, It likely released a toxic substance that seeped into the wounds of its victim, which would have been a surefire death sentence. But this conclusion is only speculation at the moment. Empu Gong and his colleagues also suggested the unique features could be something else entirely. The dinosaur may have used its long fangs to penetrate thick feathers on birds, much like a modern snake. Either way, this creature was terrifying. It lived 124 million years ago in China and was more bird than dinosaur. It was covered in feathers and only measured about 3 feet long, but it was absolutely vicious. Number 7. The Morose Intrepidus. Scientists have recently found a new species of tiny tyrannosaur. The tyrannosaur is named Morose Intrepidus, and it was discovered in Utah. If the T-Rex was the king of the dinosaurs, the Morose Intrepidus was the court jester. This small yet fearsome carnivore was barely bigger than the T-Rex's big toe. It was less than 5 feet tall and weighed around 170 pounds. It was also exceptionally gangly. It lived about 96 million years ago, making it the oldest Cretaceous tyrannosaur to ever be found in Utah. Paleontologist Lindsay Zano says its discovery is helping scientists understand how the tyrannosaur evolved from such a pipsqueak into the shark-toothed monsters we see on TV. The truth is that at the dawn of the Cretaceous, roughly 145 million years ago, meat-eating tyrannosaurs weren't all that big. They were small predators that hunted near the feet of bigger carnivores like the Allosaurus. However, 60 million years of evolution later, they had turned into some of the largest dinosaurs in the world. The tyrannosaur grew about 10 times larger, climbing to the very top of the food chain. How exactly they accomplished such a feat has always been a mystery to scientists. And now things have gotten even stranger. The date of the Morose Intrepidus suggests tyrannosaurs stayed small for an extremely long time. They only bloomed into giant monsters over a span of about 16 million years, which is pretty impressive even in the grand scope of things. Now scientists just need to figure out what provoked them to evolve so fast, growing from tiny critters with skinny legs to the mighty and massive T-Rex. Number 6. The Bent Sword Dinosaur. The Machairoceratops roughly translates to bent sword. It was a truly terrifying dinosaur that reached a maximum length of about 26 feet and weighed 2 tons. Surprisingly, it was only about half the weight of the more commonly known Triceratops. The less famous Ceratopsian, the family that the Triceratops belongs to, lived between 81 and 77 million years ago in North America. This was at a time when the continent was split in half. There was one massive landmass in what is now Appalachia and another one on the west coast, with a huge body of water separating them. Fossils of the Machairoceratops were first found on the west coast of Canada in 2016 by scientist Mark A. Lowen, who was floored by the dinosaur's unique frill ornamentation. While the Triceratops had 3 dominant horns, the Machairoceratops had 2 main horns coming out above its eyes, as well as 2 curved horns on the top of its skull like bent swords, hence the name. Other than being huge and scary, almost nothing is known about the new dinosaur. It was only recently identified and is currently represented by a single collection of skull bones. Scientists haven't even found the rest of its body, or its entire head. Number 5. Giant Footprints. In Yorkshire, England, someone came across an unexpected footprint on the coastline. Local archaeologist Marie Woods was going for a stroll along the rocky coast in 2021 when she came across the largest dinosaur footprint of its kind in the region. The print is almost 3 feet long and was made by a massive carnivore from the Jurassic period. About 166 million years ago, a huge and almost certainly ferocious predator took a brief rest on the coastline. The dinosaur relaxed and then crouched down a moment, making a deep imprint in the muck with its foot. That imprint was then fossilized, and all these years later, it's visible on the beach for everyone to see. The Yorkshire coastline is famous in the world of paleontology for its fossil deposits. Scientists have found all kinds of great specimens here, and yet nobody had ever uncovered this footprint. People had likely been walking over the imprint for years before Marie identified it. It's now one of 6 that have been recorded along the Yorkshire coast. The first was from a tridactyl that left its 3-toed footprint a long time ago, which was identified in 1934. But what left this preposterously huge footprint behind? Scientists say it may have been a type of megalosaurus, or at least something similar. It was likely a ferocious carnivore that stood somewhere around 36 feet tall. Number 4. Reptile Graveyard. One thing you might not expect to find in the Nevada desert is an ancient reptile graveyard. But hiding underneath a thin layer of sand in Nevada are thousands of preserved fossils. Locals started catching on in the 1950s. People began to dig up bizarre skeletons of strange animals that looked like a monstrous mix between a whale and a crocodile. Over 70 years later, we've now identified these creatures as ichthyosaurs. Many of them have been found in Nevada, left behind from a time when a huge part of North America was underwater. The ichthyosaur was about the size of a school bus. It was a marine reptile that lived alongside dinosaurs, but wasn't technically a dinosaur itself. It had a fairly long run on the planet as well, only going extinct an estimated 90 million years ago. Some were small, no bigger than dolphins, but others could grow to over 50 feet in length. They were around for so long that they diverged and evolved in several different directions, just like sharks did. But here in Nevada, something strange happened prior to the extinction of these monsters. Scientists have found so many fossilized ichthyosaur remains that they suspect there may have been a kind of mass casualty event. Even weirder is that they have found all kinds of fossils from these animals, but barely any fossils from other animals. So why are there so many adult ichthyosaur remains here and almost nothing else? Unfortunately, scientists don't really know the answer. Neil Kelly, a paleontologist from Vanderbilt University, says it could have been any number of things. It may have been a mass stranding, with hundreds of bus-sized reptiles getting beached, or it could have been a natural disaster. But what's even more frightening to think about is that there might have been a much larger creature with an insatiable appetite feasting on the ichthyosaurs. What do you think happened? Let me know in the comments below. Number 3. The astonishing Elasmosaur. Paleontologists working with the Queensland Museum Network in Australia recently came across a fantastic specimen. They found the head and body of a marine reptile just as frightening as the ichthyosaur. It's called the Elasmosaur, and it lived 100 million years ago. From between 145 and 65 million years ago, the marine predator occupied the inland sea that covered a huge chunk of Australia. The discovery is a big deal because it's the first time a head and body have been found together, and both are in pristine condition. They were discovered on a ranch near the tiny outback settlement of McKinley. It was the rancher who came across the remains and sent a photo of it to the scientists, who then scrambled to reach the site as quickly as they could. It's such an amazing find that it's been compared to the Rosetta Stone. Archaeologists are hoping that with such perfect remains, they'll unravel the secret evolution of all long-necked plesiosaurs. Right now, pretty much all they know about the beast is that it was massive. It was likely a juvenile Elasmosaurus, only measuring about 23 feet long. It was just a baby at the time of its death, but it was still bigger than a bus. However, keep in mind the Elasmosaurus was 2/3 neck. It was like a long-necked sauropod, only it lived in the ocean. The largest of these animals could likely reach lengths of up to 45 feet, possibly even more. They glided through the water like living ships, easily swimming through the ocean using their giant flippers and necks that were bigger than trees. Number 2. A fish in the road. A prehistoric fish fossil was recently excavated from underneath a road in rural South Africa. During construction, workers identified the fossil of a monstrous fish that was about 8 feet long. It's been extinct for nearly 419 million years, making the fish far older than any dinosaur that ever existed. The majority of its dermal skull Jaw and shoulder girdle were miraculously intact. Even more exciting is that the fish was found to be a totally new species, which paleontologists named something that I can't pronounce. Nobody could have imagined that underneath an old country road was the skeleton of a fish from almost 500 million years ago. Paleontologists think the fish may have been related to some of the first tetrapods, which are animals with 4 limbs. It evolved during the days of Gondwana, the supercontinent which formed 550 million years ago. Other fish like it have been found in Australia, but this specimen is totally unique. It shows just how exciting and diverse the world already was, even when we only had one continent and fish hadn't evolved to live on dry land yet. Number 1. The Platypus Cousin. During the days of the dinosaurs, there was a creature so strange it's hard to believe something like it still exists today. A relative of the platypus, one of the weirdest animals in the world, lived in South America about 70 million years ago in the late Cretaceous. The creature is part of the monotreme family, which includes modern animals like the echidna and, of course, the platypus. In fact, these are the only 2 animals in the monotreme family that made it into modern times, and both are native to Australia and its surrounding islands. But 70 million years ago, there were other strange mammalians living in South America. The platypus's ancient cousin, a creature named Monotrematum sudamericanum, was identified thanks to a single tooth found about 30 years ago in Patagonia, Argentina. This animal laid eggs, which is extremely strange seeing as other mammals aren't able to do so. The truly remarkable part, though, is that scientists were even able to identify it as an ancient platypus based on a single tooth. We don't even have a skeleton of one of these animals. It really makes you wonder what kinds of other bizarre and unusual creatures once roamed our planet. What are your thoughts on the bizarre cousin of the platypus? Let us all know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!